Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I believe that we do have a quorum, so I am going to call to order the January 31st, 2012 meeting of the MDX Board of Directors. If I could have our board secretary do a roll call.
Yes, sir. Mr. Fernandez Guzman. Mr. Ferre. Ms. Gutierrez.
Here.
Mr. Evia.
Here.
Mr. Holland.
Here.
Mr. Malouf.
Here.
Mr. Martinez.
Here.
Mr. Pago. Mr. Sanabria.
Here.
Ms. Solder McKinley. Mr. Wortman. Vice Chair Fano. Chair Lazarte.
Here. If we could have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Secretary Pago.
Uh-huh.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Pam, could you please go into the declaration of voting conflicts, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, in your packet you have potential conflicts of interest information that you should have had an opportunity to review. If any of the board members have any conflicts related to any of the action items on the agenda today, if you would state that for the record, please.
I have none.
None shown, Mr. Chair.
Could we have a motion to approve the minutes of the December 13th board meeting?
I'll make the motion.
The motion, there's a second.
Second.
If there's no objections, that item passes. We're going to have the citizens' comments. I believe that we have two individuals from Rollback Tolls, and there's also a gentleman from the Sierra Club that, although I don't believe they've made the timely submission to speak, we are going to hear them out, and hopefully they'll keep their comments to, I believe, 3 minutes. If we could have Carlos Garcia. Carlos, if you're here.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Garcia with RollbackTolls.com. Thank you for allowing me to address you today. I and my group have some concerns with regards to project 83618, which is the expansion of the 836 West, as is proposed in the 5-year work program. We feel that this project and any extension west and then south, but particularly west, to the Everglades has its issues, among them the possibility for more urban sprawl, damage to the already violated Everglades National Park, and have a negative impact on the $12 billion Everglades Restoration Project. I and a lot of people that we've talked to have similar concerns about that, especially that it butts up against the urban development line. And a suggestion that I have, as opposed to spending money on a project like this, I would suggest that the board look at saving the money and applying it to pay down the present debt, or applying the money to increase capacity on existing toll roads beyond what is presently being done. I particularly am not too fond of the idea of my toll dollars that I spend on 874 or 878 going towards an expansion or an intrusion into the Everglades. I feel we don't need it. My group feels we don't need it. And that is our concern. I'd like to speak shortly to basically the vision. What we've noticed lately is that, and it's the mantra of MDX, to build roads. You know, I understand that. But roads are, we feel, a very short-term solution. The project, I believe, has and exposes the shortcomings of the mandate of Miami-Dade Expressway Authority. There are many other viable transportation options that are not being considered or are being overlooked because of the short-sightedness of the vision of roads, baby roads. It's short-term gain for long-term pain. And those are my comments. If you have any questions or anything for me, that is what I'd like to address the board for today.
Are there any comments or questions to Mr. Garcia? Hearing none. Thanks, Mr. Garcia.
Okay.
Oh, you do? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr.
Yes, sir.
I just thank you for taking the time to come down and share your.
It's always a pleasure.
If roads, if the board, if anybody on the board has a problem with my comments, then I'll withdraw them. We're like a tight schedule or something.
No, go ahead.
Okay. If you have if you take issue with roads or some sort some form of mobility out there, do you have an alternative form of transportation that you think may be more suitable?
Well, there are other alternatives that are available that I think that that the mandate of this organization prohibits it from looking beyond roads to light rail, other forms of metro rail or other forms of options, because these roads are basically just going to lead us into and chain us into our cars for the next 20, 30, 40 years. We're never going to get out of our cars if we all can look at it, just focus on roads. I mean, I live out in West Kendall, and I don't have any problems getting in and around, to here. I made it from West Kendall to here in 25 minutes. I think it's a project that is, what we're concerned about is the urban sprawl beyond on the west side of that proposed expansion and further intrusion, because it would be too easy in the future to build some exits and then go further west. And we believe that's a picture for an unsustainable 40, 50 years down the road in this county. Those are my comments.
Carlos, let me just tell you one thing. And by the way, I do appreciate what you said about looking at other ulterior forms of transportation. But I think you're the first guy in West Kendall that said that it wasn't a problem coming out of West Kendall to come out here. Because let me tell you something. I don't live out there, but I do go out there every once in a while, and I can tell you, on a Saturday morning, on 137th Avenue and Kendall Drive.
Oh, yeah, it's a nightmare.
It's gridlock. That's on a Saturday morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but listen, I'm glad that
I was lucky.
that you
It
were able
was
to-
like bam, bam, smooth sailing all the way. I was really impressed.
Yeah.
Myself.
Do you? Is the issue that you don't want the expressway running outside the UDB, or is the issue that you want us to explore other alternative methods
Other
of delivery?
alternatives. It seems to me, and having been dealing now with MDX now for a year and a half or so, that it's like a tunnel vision focus on a road, a toll road, and that's all we know. And that concerns me. And when other cities around the country have been faced with a situation that we have now, particularly like Dallas as an example, and it took 18 years, but look at them now, and I just thinking a little bit outside of the toll lane is what I'm trying to get the conversation going. That's all.
Thanks, Carlos.
Thank you.
If I could have Mr. Miller Myers.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Miller Myers, rollbacktolls.com. I'm going to be more specific in my comments. I want to address the 874 connector that's slated to go over the turnpike, drop down where Signature Gardens, and then proceed west on 128th Street to 137th Avenue. And by the way, I appreciate the comments you made about 137th Avenue. We'll get there in a minute. I do have some handouts for the board. Can they be distributed? When I was first introduced to this project, 11501, the county calls it, it was at Country Walk, and what we were told was that we're looking at 136th Street and we're looking at 128th Street. But 136th Street, Durham doesn't like it very much. That's a Department of
Mr. Matt, what is 11501?
That's what the county calls, that's the county's name for their study of this project.
County project.
That's correct. That's the county PD&E study. What we were told when we went to that workshop, excuse me, by MDX representatives was that Durham, Department of Environmental Resource Management, had in fact said, you can't touch 1 inch of 136th Street. There's a Pineland Reserve, Tamiami Pineland Reserve, stay away, it's off the table. That they were looking at 136, at 128th, that basically that they had blessed and said that's okay if you do the project over there, so MDX was leaning in that direction. In doing some homework, I find that that wasn't really the case. What we did find is 2 reports that I'm sharing with the board, parts of the report that we find relevant. First, a memo to Myra Diaz on July 26th of 2010, 6 months prior to this workshop, and then another letter from Mark Leferrier on August 26th, a month later, of 2010, and just a couple of the salient points. And by the way, the environment isn't the only issue, so I'll try to go through this, but if you'll allow me a little bit of time leverage, this is real important. In the Durham report, the July 26th that you have in front of you, Durham urges MDX to pursue ramp connector alternatives that avoid all impacts to the Nixon Smiley Preserve. The 128th Street is known as Alternative A, and it says that portion, 127th to 137th, which is where Nixon Smiley is, should be avoided as it may impact the southern boundary of the preserve. Going on to the next page where it talks about flora and fauna, 1 candidate federally endangered species, 24 state endangered or threatened plant species, 1 state animal species of special concern have been documented at the Nixon Smiley Pineland Preserve. Next page. Because of that, Policy 9.8 goes into effect. All activities that adversely affect habitat that is critical to federal or state designated endangered or threatened species shall be prohibited unless such activities are a public necessity. And respectfully, Board, I think that's a high standard, public necessity. And there are no possible alternative sites where the activities can occur. Paved roads and approved access are not compatible with the protection of biological and ecological functions in this region. Road construction, increased traffic, and vehicle use will pose a significantly elevated threat of roadkill, contamination, and will be detrimental to wildlife. Therefore, construction of this highway features may significantly impact portions of the preserves, may make future land management activities required for this habitat less feasible, and may permanently alter habitat.
Could you hold on for a quick second? I think one of our board members had a... okay, no, go ahead, finish.
If I can, as to the other report from Mark Leferrier, again to Ms. Diaz, this department finds that the proposed alignments of the 874 ramp connector illustrated in alternatives A is 128th Street, and it mentions the other alternatives, are generally inconsistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the CDMP. They everywhere I've seen environmentally, they say don't do it, don't do it. Carlos, just serendipity, this is not showboating, I swear. This morning, he lives right there. This morning he was taking his girls to school, and there was a fox. And you know what? Right at 127th Avenue and 128th Street. A fox. Pass this to the mayor. You know what, though? I would hope that next year, and the year after, and the year after that, when he goes by there, he could see a fox again and again and again. That's the point. That's environmental.
That's scary.
There's other reasons that this project fails. There's been a shifting alternative since this project started. And I would suggest that MDX has a way of just continuing to go forward, and I'm looking for another gear here, a reverse gear, to say, you know what, things have changed. Just like a few weeks ago, FDOT held a public hearing and threw away a turbo lane at 107th and Killian. And said, you know what, we're not going to do it. It doesn't make sense. We would hope that this board finds the same thing on this connector on 128th Street. I know that you hold a standard similar to the doctors, do no harm. Here's what happened. At that Country Walk public hearing, we were told that the price tag would be somewhere between $90 and $60 million. We then go 6-8 months later in a non-inflationary time to another public hearing where 128th Street has been selected at Holiday Inn Express, and suddenly the price tag is $108 million. That price tag jumped somewhere between 20 and 80% for no reason. If I was a businessman at $108 million before I spent it, especially when it up 20 to 80%, I'd want to know why and what I was getting for my money. Additionally, in terms of shifting concerns, and this is real important, one of the things mentioned in these reports was the objections and the impact that if you went 136th Street would have on Venencia Lakes and Bonita Lakes. Those people objected. Hey, it's going to affect our quality of life. Well, now you have a church, Vineland Church, praise God, wants to buy Signature Gardens. They have 3,000 members in that church. Your project would come over the turnpike and dump right into their church, taking away their parking, taking away their building, and rendering that property useless for the intended purpose of a church. That's a shifting reality, and I would ask the board to take consideration for that. One other thing that this board has never addressed in any of the hearings, if you're going to diffuse traffic, 120th, 152nd, 104th, what happens at 137th Avenue? What happens when all that traffic, I called it a ghastly gaggle of gridlock, and that's what it is. I do everything I can to stay away from it unless I have to go to Costco, and then I go for gas at 6:30 in the morning.
Mr. Myers, I guess ultimately what you want us to do is to reconsider this particular project, correct?
That is correct. That is correct. One other thing is that the FDOT is now spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $180 million to widen, resurface, and improve the turnpike that's caught right in the middle from Eureka, 184th Street, to Kendall Drive, 88th Street. If they're spending it, and one of the reasons to do this was to improve 128th Street, they're already doing it. Before this board spends $108 million, save your money and let's find something else to do with it. Thank you for your time.
Are there any questions from the board? Go ahead. Board Member
I don't
Gibbons.
have any questions to our citizens' comments, but they've alleged and they've made statements as facts. So what I would like is at the appropriate time for staff to address those particular items, separate both of them. One, the project, mainly I'm concerned, how did the purse go up and what in fact is the impact that we're causing? And on the other, yeah, we are an authority of expressways, and expressways are connectivity, and until the lanes on the air have been addressed, otherwise for us to also go up and build, we have to build roads. So having said that, given that we are considering a project that is outside of the UDB line, my concern would be what part of the study does it address any impact on the Everglades? Because I think I'm not opposed building expressways that give connectivity to people to get to places faster, but not at, the jeopardizing our precious Everglades, not further debilitating it in any which way. So I would like to know the facts be given, and quick answer, does the PD&E study the impact, if any, adverse effects to the Everglades?
For the first project, which is 83618, what is only programmed in our work program is an environmental impact statement.
You say only?
The only thing that is funded is an environmental impact statement. The reason it's an environmental impact statement is because that's the highest level of environmental analyses and regulatory consultation that is necessary to approve a project. The ETDM process, the early advanced notification and streamlining process, is intended to get this feedback, specifically what Mr. LaFerriere and Mr. Gonzalez stated to us, so that through the project we address these specific issues and we either minimize, mitigate, or avoid these issues. And if we can't prove as part of the project that we've done that, then the project becomes non-permittable. For 87410, these things that are stated in this in these two letters is the subject of the PD&E study, is the subject of what is being addressed and how those issues will be mitigated, minimized, or avoided. Again, Mr. Myers, if we can't achieve that, then we can't have a project. So your points are well taken. That's the intent of the PD&E. On the 836 piece, I think it would be very presumptuous at this particular time to assume it's going to be a superhighway and that it's going to be outside or inside the UDB. All we have stated in the long-range transportation plan is that there is a need, a transportation need, to connect where people work to where people live. Nothing more, nothing less. We also recognize that it's the highest level of environmental concern because of the South Florida watershed studies, because of the Everglades restoration, because of its proximity to the Miccosukee lands. Therefore, that is why it's an environmental impact statement. It'll be 3 to 4 years of environmental analysis consultation and many stages of public input and regulatory consultation throughout the process. So your points are well taken, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
I think Mr. Sanabria wanted to go first, and then go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Myers, very impressed with the amount of research you've done, and I commend you for coming to the board from West Kendall, and I commend you for bringing these documents and making an eloquent statement. I appreciate it. I do know that area quite well. I want to tell you that no matter where you go, in 120th Street or 128th or 136th, in each one of those intersections, exactly at 120th Street and 117th Avenue, there's also a Durham Pineland Preserve to protect gopher turtles. I don't know if you knew that, but it's exactly at the northeast corner of that intersection. On 128th Street, it's the southern part of that Pineland Preserve that you're talking about. And on 136th Street, you got pretty much a natural bottleneck from the Pineland Preserve that has to go over, and you also have the railroad that it's closed and won't allow a southern transition on the road. But the understanding here is what we're trying to do here is to try to unclog the massive traffic jams that occur at Kendall Drive and 152nd Street are the only east-west roads that really have access to the metropolitan areas and the work area. So we're trying to do our best. I think the PD&E study will deal with a lot of these issues, but again, I think you're doing a good job, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. 137th Avenue, I'm still not hearing anything.
Well, okay. Mayor,
That's Project B.
Anyone else?
Mayor, did you want to say something?
Mr. Chairman, as you know as well as I do, this procedure of allowing the public to speak before the meeting begins is a new procedure which we've just started. This is the first time where I think I've seen it functioning, and I think it's wonderful.
Excellent.
As you know, our rules are that you accepted and that we all voted on unanimously was that it would be a 3-minute limitation.
Yes.
Now, I think you're wise in permitting Mr. Meyer to go beyond 3 minutes. He went beyond 10 minutes. That's fine. I don't have any problems with that. And I'm not in any way reprimanding you or him or anybody else about the usage of time.
That's good.
I do think that
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hold on it.
I do think that when we engage in debate, and I don't mean to criticize my good friend, my two good friends, what occurs, of course, is that a 3-minute public item becomes a 20-minute discussion item. Now, there is a public hearing methodology that exists. Now, I don't have any problem with having members of the distinguished public people who are really interested in these issues to speak. I don't have any problem with letting them speak more than 3 minutes. I do think that we have to be measured, because otherwise we're in effect circumventing the procedure that we have established for a long time as to when public hearings are and how they occur. This is a circumvention of that, which is fine under the circumstances. And my last point is that I see that we have a third speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I
Thank
think
you.
I would request that out of courtesy to the third speaker, that you allow him the same time that Mr. Myers spoke.
I will. And also, I know that the executive director, told me that perhaps what we can do is have a report of these PD&Es at the operations committee. And obviously that could be vetted out further and explained to the members, and obviously members of the public could attend that meeting as well.
And the
Mayor, go ahead.
and the ETDM, which is the strictest of all environmental studies, is that
EIS.
correct?
The EIS, yeah.
Huh?
The EIS.
And the EIS.
Environmental impact.
So we're going not to a lower level, but to the highest level of environmental studies, is that correct?
Yes.
Sir.
Yep.
If Mr. Jonathan Ullman could.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you, especially commend you for your enlightened position on having a public comment period at the beginning. I think that's fantastic, and we do appreciate it. My name is Jonathan Ullman. I'm the South Florida Everglades representative for the National Sierra Club. I'm also representing the Sierra Club Miami group. The Sierra Club is the country's oldest and largest grassroots environmental organization with 800,000 members nationwide and about 3,000 members in Miami-Dade County.
And I'm one.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice.
So you have a conflict right now.
No, you're going to get me in trouble.
Well, you're all invited to join, but I wanted to congratulate you on your shift to transit. I've heard a lot about how MDX is getting into transit now, and I think that's fantastic. But I must tell you that we have serious concerns about the 836 Southwest Extension project and its impacts to residents, agriculture, and America's Everglades. We believe this road will actually increase, not alleviate, congestion on State Road 836. Currently, commuters have the option of getting on a myriad of MDX roads. And those roads have been and are currently being expanded to handle greater capacity. Future and existing toll revenues, though, should be spent on maintaining those roads and on putting money into public transit alternatives. It should not be put into building new roads into environmentally sensitive areas. We believe that this project would threaten Everglades National Park and nearby federally protected wetlands. A new layer of highway extending away from the city will fuel sprawl because of its proximity to the urban development boundary. This highway would attract development of agriculture, and wildlands, buffering Everglades, and pose a direct threat to the $12 billion federal state Everglades Restoration Project. At least 115 people have sent emails over the past week raising concerns with this project. Please listen to those words, and we ask you to remove the 836 Southwest Extension project from the 5-year plan. Now, I have a person here who is also in the same situation as me on Tuesday when we came to speak, and I'd like to, if she could have a couple minutes of my time from the Sierra Club as well. She also had requested to speak.
Mr. Ullman, I'm going to allow her to do it. However, normally there's a process. You guys are, I know you guys are pretty savvy when it comes to, looking things up and seeing process on things. I want to make sure that we follow the process.
Okay.
And the reason I say it's not because of anything. This is a board of volunteers, and I like to be mindful of everybody's time, including your own. And the fact that she came, I want to also let her speak. But, we have an agenda. It's lengthy, and I can't keep people here, like at the county commission, for 9 hours. So that's why we have these rules.
We did
set up.
indicate our interest in speaking on Tuesday, yes.
Look, I think under the circumstances it's warranted. She's here. I just want to make sure that everybody follows the protocol from now on.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mara Schlackman. I'm the chair of the Broward Sierra Group. I did come to the public review last Tuesday, submit a comment card there. I also emailed supplemental comments to the Public Information Officer. I realize that this is an issue of great concern to Miami-Dade residents, but also I can tell you a number of our Broward Sierra members have sent emails in on this issue as well. The Everglades are a treasure for the planet and also a resource used by our Broward Sierra members. And the alternatives proposed at this point on this project, 3 of them take this extension out to Chrome Avenue. The other one is pretty close to the urban development boundary. The same concerns about sprawl and the impact on the eastern Everglades concern our Broward members as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board, particularly to Ms. Schlackman or Mr. Ullman's comments?
Just a brief comment. if
Go
I
ahead,
may.
Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to commend our executive director for the proficiency of keeping us and the public informed. You will see in your green packet dated January 24th, Tuesday, comment summary of everyone that has had a public comment on this. We had a public hearing on this. So this is a second really unauthorized public hearing, but that's fine, got no problem with that. But we had a public hearing, and there were some written submissions, and they're all here for us to look at. I would, since this is dated January 24th, and today is the 31st, 7 days have gone by, and I would hope that in the future that this would be emailed, or was it emailed? I haven't seen it. It was emailed today.
If there are no other comments, before we continue with the rest of our agenda, we have 2 former board members here, Nick and Amdar and George Vigil, and it's strange seeing them sitting out there. And these were two great board members, guys who were team players and always never had any complaints about anything. You guys always were out there willing to work hard in the board, and Nick was up here. He would, I think at times, he was like a straight shooter. He wanted to cut through the debate and just move on things. And I always respected him for wanting to move things along quickly in an efficient manner. And George is a guy that we saw blossom. He's a quiet guy, and then as he got into the role of treasurer and more involved, really he's a guy that at times when there was a lot of debate, I would look to him to see what he had to say on an issue. So I'm glad they're both here. They're certainly welcome to say something if they'd like, but I know we have some plaques, and we want to thank you for your service, and we hope you guys continue to do the same thing in other agencies and out there in the community as well for your public service. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Felix, for those kind words. I just want to say that it's been an incredible opportunity. Developed a lot of very good friendships that I'm sure will last a lifetime. Learned a lot from every single one of you. To Javier, I think you run a phenomenal ship here. And just to touch on it, I think it's great what the last 4 speakers said. But I want to encourage you that that what you do is very, very important. And don't lose sight of that. Continue to move MDX forward and continue to allow the county to grow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really had an excellent time here during, I think, 6 years, starting with Dale Sharpton in 2006, when I was appointed by Jeb Bush up until now. It seems like the world has changed about 40 times since then. But we've been through a lot. I learned tremendously on this board. I came in as a complete novice to transportation issues, and now I have a beginner's proficiency in some of these issues. So, I really learned quite a bit about these issues, and I also learned quite a bit about dealing with fellow board members and got to respect practically every person on this board, and certainly the staff of MDX. You have a wonderful staff here. They, like Nick said, runs a very clean ship and a very efficient ship. So I wanted to thank you all. Had a wonderful 6-year run, and I had another 45 minutes of comments prepared, but the public comment period took it away, so I'll just spare everyone else from that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just say one, yeah, just one short thing. I wasn't with Nick when you guys went to Washington, but I heard, and not from Javier, the results. And I just want to tell you that we're going to miss Nick. Nick was one of the most astute practitioners of the fine art of talking to elected officials. And I'll say it in the polite way rather than to say lobbyist, okay? And our treasurer, who is the only person on this board who continuously has served as much as I have, because I think you've served more than you both have served longer than I have, but not continuously. And I include Gene Prescott, who was a terrific guy. This is the best treasurer we've ever had, and I just want to leave it on the record.
Wow.
If you guys can, in the well? So we can take photographs.
I'll have the one. Careful, it doesn't get you in.
But be careful when you walk in.
Sure. With Nick, I'll take a picture. With Nick, I'll take a picture.
Good to meet you. Please. Sorry that I won't be on there with you after hearing that. Are we supposed to go in? Are we supposed to go in? Yeah. But,
The doc sits in the middle, the alpha letter at the end.
One, two, three. One more. One, two, three.
Is that a white angle?
You got everybody.
That was mean.
You're in the best of it.
With that, before we resume the regular board meeting, I also now wanted to take the opportunity to welcome our two newest board members, Carlos R. Fernandez Guzman and Mr. Jose Evia. Gentlemen, welcome on board to this family we call the MDX board. It's a great family. We even have at times a little dysfunctional members in the family, but that's fine. You guys are really big. I've read your resumes. Jose, I've worked with you in the past. You guys have tremendous civic involvement. Carlos, you in the area of finance, I think you're going to be a great asset to this board. And Jose, you do pretty much everything, but in the world of development, you made a great name for yourself, and I think your experiences here is going to be fantastic for this board. And I welcome both of you guys. And
Thank you. We look forward to being here.
Mr. Chair, I want to declare a conflict on 9.
could we note that for the record? 9C, what's the conflict, Mr. Maloof?
It's something with my firm.
Okay.
Nothing to do with this agency.
Okay.
I'll fill out the forms.
Excellent. Okay, so with that, we're going to the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members, and again, on behalf of the staff, welcome to our newest board members, and thank you for the time you gave us in allowing us to brief you on the business of MDX, and we look forward to working you in the future. As far as our former board members, and I'm sorry to see them leave, but I have spoken to both of them personally. It was a privilege for me to work with them. I learned a lot from both of them, from Nick and from George. It's like I tell George, there's many reasons why I came to MDX, but one of those reasons that I considered when I came to MDX was George Vigil, and I told him that, and I am grateful for his for the way he conducted himself. So thank you. My report this month, Mr. Chair and board members, it's got a lot of some good issues, interesting issues that are in line with what a lot that we heard earlier. Back in December, right after our board meeting, the 4 toll agencies in Florida got together at the University of South Florida. Team Florida, which is the Association of Expressway Authorities in Florida, convened a meeting to have a conversation to look at ways to improve customer service and look for operational and financial efficiencies. This is an idea that MDX and Tampa have been floating for a number of years, and I think its time has come. The idea here is for all the toll agencies in Florida to work together to make sure that our customers are handled correctly, that we all have a united, integrated system that handles one account, one customer. Doesn't matter where you drive. Customers don't distinguish between Florida's Turnpike and MDX or Orlando Expressway Authority versus Florida's Turnpike in Central Florida. Our customers, our commuters, our drivers and visitors want to get from point A to point B safely and efficiently. And I think it is incumbent upon us to look for ways to improve the operation and improve the customer service. With that, at the last Team Florida meeting, the Team Florida board endorsed a resolution, encouraging the 4 toll agencies to work together to find efficiencies and improve, coordinate efforts and seek cost savings combining operations. And I included a copy of the resolution in your agenda. And thank Mayor Ferre and Board Member Wortman for attending that. I wasn't able to attend, but I know that we were well represented. So we'll keep you abreast as this progresses. I've had conversations with the new director at the Turnpike, and she is ready, willing, and able to work with the agencies to do this on behalf of our customers. Mr. Ferre and I attended in early January, the Florida Transportation, January 9th and 10th. We attended the Florida Transportation Committee meeting where on the 9th we heard the introduction of the work program by the FDOT for 5 years, similar to what we just discussed and will have further in our agenda. And we got to hear from all the districts on the various projects and important projects, and Secretary Pagel was there and highlighted the multiple projects we have in Miami-Dade County where we partner as an authority and the Department of Transportation for the betterment of commuters in our community. And that I take great pride coming from FDOT and working with FDOT. That is very important. On the 10th, Mayor Ferre and I attended the workshop. And at the workshop, State Secretary Anath Prasad set 4 goals for the Transportation Commission and for the department. The 4 goals were to look at vehicle miles traveled as an alternate way of financing transportation, recognizing that gas tax revenues are declining because of the way it's a regressive tax. It's based on consumption. And the more efficient vehicles are, the less gas tax you're collecting. And the intent of the gas tax was to finance exactly what we heard today, operations and maintenance of the interstate highway system that was built in the mid-50s. So it's like the demand is up, but the revenues are down. And he wants the Transportation Commission support into looking at being a leader in the transition away from gasoline tax to a vehicle miles traveled. He also set out a goal to look at future corridors. And these corridors connect our ports and our airports, seaports, and spaceports. He also talked about regional governance because of the census, the 2010 census, and are we organized correctly from a metropolitan planning organization standpoint around Florida. So he wants to look at that. And the final one he talked about was freight movement and its direct linked to the economic stability of this state and the governor's goals in moving freight around the state. At the same time, Mr. Ferre introduced a letter that he had submitted to the governor on some initiatives, and not surprisingly, but I think to the testament of Mr. Ferre and this board, they were in line. And I'll paraphrase some of the things that Mr. Ferre said on in his letter. He said that MDX, in line with FDOT's goals, should look at 4 things. Number 1, creating choices for all of our commuters. Number 2, regional governance. Best decisions are made at the local and regional level. Number 3, include the private and public sector in partnerships, and he used MDX as an example. And number 4, let's be creative in our financing. So that was very in line, Mr. Ferre, with what the Secretary mentioned. And again, I will continue to work with the state and try to see how we can get projects done. It isn't about who takes the lead. It's about doing what's right in this community. And so those were those 2 days, and I'll let Mr. Ferre add on a little later. Right after that meeting, board members, we hosted Deputy Mayor Alina Hudak here at the authority. She spent an afternoon at MDX to learn how we do business. As Deputy Mayor, she has transit and public works, waste management under her authority, and she wanted to see how we all work together. So Secretary Pago and I have been meeting with her and other directors at the Miami-Dade County departments to ensure that we are all talking. As I've stated many times, every major transportation initiative in Miami-Dade County over the last 20 years has been the result of a partnership between state, local, and federal governments. So we do talk, and we try to get things done. On that line, Vice Chairwoman, the MPO's Vice Chair, our former Chairwoman Maritza Gutierrez, sponsored an MPO roundtable, an initiative where the MPO needs to start thinking about what's in the future. So MDX hosted the conversation on behalf of the MDX here, and Board Member Gutierrez, you will address that a little bit later in your report of the MPO. Just recently, board members, and in your package, Reasons Foundation, and everyone knows Reasons Foundation, Robert Poole think tank, just came out where they published a report regarding toll agency consolidation. I bring that in Florida. And they were doing a report nationwide of these efficiencies that might be gained by consolidating certain agencies, the pluses and minuses. And he published a report. It is in your package as well for your reading. This is timely because there is still discussions in the legislature of combining some of the functions of the agencies in Central Florida under the state, under the Florida's Turnpike. So we will continue to monitor that as it moves forward. And last but not least, it's a save the date for everyone here. This year, our 9th annual Small and Minority Business Enterprise Workshop is going to be in May, not in June. So follow our website and stay tuned. On that note, I do want to mention something that we have done based on comments we received at last year's small business workshop and some of the job fairs we went. It's really good to offer small businesses work, or the ability to compete for work. But a lot of the people that go to these meetings are out of work, have been are unemployed, lost their jobs, downsized, so on and so forth. So what we developed based on the feedback from these groups was we developed a career enhancement program where MDX is going, looking at our work program, what's coming out, and finding out the types of work that are going to be advertised. And if people are interested in getting certain certifications that will enhance their ability to get a job at one of the companies that does business with MDX or would compete, that they would register through the website, and that at no cost to them would get this training. And I'll say this so that if anyone's listening, if you're interested in concrete field inspector, asphalt paving level 1, and these are specific job certifications that are a benefit to contractors who do business with us. And these are in line with the work program and the jobs that are going to come out for competitive bid. And the third one was job hunting survival skills, how to put a resume together, how to we're providing those courses, and Helen and her group in partnership with FIU is making this available to the community. Because one thing is to say, look, we have a small business program. And another one is to get a lot of people to show up at meetings and say, I'm out of work, how can you help me? Well, I can't help you directly unless I had a vacancy, but I can help you get the tools and give you the tools to try and get a job. So with that, I'll answer your questions, board members.
Any questions to the director? The only thing go ahead, Mr.
No.
No, the only thing I wanted to say actually to our two newest board members, the IBTTA and Team Florida.
You'll hear about this.
And obviously, I'm sure you have very busy schedules, but if your time permits, it's actually a good way to really understand what we do here and some of the things to get educated on it. It really provides a lot of opportunity to interact with other tolling agencies and with other board members, and so if your time permits, it would be a good thing for you guys to go.
You know,
you learn a lot.
On that note, Mr. Chairman, this year, the 80th Annual IBTTA, International Bridge, Tunnel, and Turnpike Association, which is a worldwide association of toll operators, transportation agencies, both on the public and private side, the 80th annual meeting is going to be held in Orlando, Florida. And one of the things we're advocating this year is that right before the session starts, that there will be a governance roundtable where board members from around the world, whether you're a board member for a private concession, a public agency, or a quasi-public agency like us, would sit down and discuss different issues of what they look at as board members, what's important, and that is very important. It's been very beneficial on the executive director side, where I get to interact with 30 or 40 directors from around the world and seek their advice and input on trends and issues that affect our industry. We wanted to promote the same thing for board members, and we're going to roll that out this year at the IBTTA. So.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the executive director, my thanks for his help and guidance. The two new board members, congratulations and welcome. The IBTTA meeting in Orlando is really a must for both of you, and I think you should really put it down early in your schedule. You'll get a better education there than you will anywhere else as to what tolling is all about. Secondly, I wanted to just share with you, because Javier, I see that we haven't sent my memorandum to the governor and the statement to the FTC, both yours and mine, and I would like to request through you that you make it available. They're public documents because I made them public with the governor's permission, and I think the board members should share that. Thirdly, I just want to tell you that the Florida Transportation Commission was formed by the legislature around 10, 12 years ago, and it's had several lives. It started out as a very important entity that, in effect, had the FDOT under it, and that caused a lot of problems at FDOT, and so somehow, somewhere, some governor in the past, which I'm not going to get into, kind of turned this thing around and weakened the FTC. What that governor did not do was change the legislation. So the legislative mandate is such that the FTC, in effect, is probably using about 10% of the powers that it has. So I am not on the FTC representing you. I am not there because of MDX. I'm on the FTC because the governor put me there. And so I am a governor appointee. The FTC, of course, is a public entity, but I want to assure you that you're going to see many, many changes in the next couple of years with this governor and with this FTC. Now, so when I wrote that memorandum, because at the Team Florida meeting, I want to just say it publicly, the lady that made the presentation and passed those memorandums around said that I had written a letter to the governor and addressed the FTC representing MDX, and that, of course, is not the case, because I was there as a member of the Florida Transportation Commission, corrected her for the record, and just want to correct it here so that there's no questions as to what this is all about. Thirdly, through the FTC, the largest, most influential transportation organization in the world is the ITS Americas. ITS Americas are 15 members, and you have people that are high vice presidents of General Motors, Toyota, Google, and a lot of the transportation entities around the world, including trains and airplanes and because it's all transportation issues worldwide. It is the biggest transportation meeting. This next year is going to be in Austria. Last year, I forget where it was. It was in Orlando. And I was elected to be on that board. Again, not representing MDX and not representing the FTC, but as a member. So the issues that are being discussed at the FTC are going to affect MDX. And I just want to say that Javier, our executive director, was absolutely instrumental in saving Team Florida from being wiped out, because it was that close to being wiped out. And it was the governor paying attention to Senator Getz and the others who said, hey, here's a source of money, and let's rate it. That was inclined to go in that direction. I'm not saying this because I don't know this for a fact. I have a suspicion that Javier had something to do with getting our friend Bob Poole involved in what is the reason's main thrust, which is regional government. And so this particular governor follows two organizations that he swears by. One is the Cato Institute, and the other one is the Reason Foundation, both libertarian foundations. The Reason Foundation is, in my opinion, the single most important entity that exists for MDX with this government on transportation issues. And fortunately, Bob Poole lives in Palm Beach and is a strong supporter of the things that we're for, which is manage roads, manage lanes. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, through you to the director, I would like to ask him to invite Bob Poole, who has been here before, to come back and address us on the importance of, one, regional government. Two, he is not yet released, but we all have copies of the preliminary report of a managed lane complex in all the highways of South Florida, which, if that happens and this governor is fully on board, is going to make a major, major difference to our friends down in South Kendall. They're going to see a very, very different kind of a transit transportation system, which I think Javier Rodriguez and MDX have been an important part of. So I just want to tell you that I, as a member of the FTC, requested 15 minutes speaking time, and Javier and I, between the two of us, took about 25 minutes. And I want to tell you that Javier and MDX were well represented, and we did a good job. The last thing I want to say is that I was there 2 days listening to an awful lot of talk. Gus Pago made the best presentation of the whole bunch.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Mr. Holland.
Mr. Mayor, Javier mentioned you only gave him 3 minutes out of the 25.
No, what happened was that I took 15 minutes, so he had no choice but to speak 15 minutes.
Any other comments to the director? I think we have our general counsel's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary, I know when I was at DOT, we used to have kind of a cheat sheet on the alphabet soup, and I don't know whether you still have that around District 6, but that might be something that would be helpful to our newest board members, because I know one of the things that we do is hit them with an awful lot of acronyms. So if you don't have that, hopefully we can put something together that would be helpful.
We definitely need a glossary for all of us.
All your acronyms are challenging, but
Two quick items from on the litigation front. We continue to await Judge Venzer's order in the community asphalt litigation that was tried the first week of October, and I remain optimistic, and I have nothing else to report on that.
Trial ended in October?
The trial was in October. Proposed orders and findings of fact and conclusions of law were submitted, I believe, on October 28th. We have very busy circuit judges here, so hopefully we will hear something from her soon. We are still on the trial calendar for the third week of March in the Superior Landscaping case. We do have a motion for summary judgment that our outside counsel filed that's scheduled for February 6th, and again, I remain optimistic. And to add a little bit to our alphabet soup, I wanted to mention very briefly that I was very fortunate to attend the 91st annual meeting of TRB, which is the Transportation Research Board in Washington, D.C., the week of January 22nd. They broke attendance records this year. There were over 11,000 transportation professionals at that meeting. It will probably provide some comfort for the engineers in the room that probably less than 200 of us were lawyers there, but all of the disciplines were represented, and it was a very good meeting. One of the remarkable things is that they did have one roundtable discussion that had all 7 of the former and existing USDOT secretaries there, and unfortunately I had to leave and wasn't able to hear that, but that was really a historic program for them to put together. One of the sessions that it was actually the last session that I attended, 8 o'clock on the 25th, was titled "The Future of the Federal Role in Transportation." And it was moderated by Amy Scarton, who is a Deputy Assistant Secretary for Transportation Policy with the USDOT. And interestingly enough, she had actually served on the staffs of both of the other participants. One was Representative Bill Schuster, Republican from Pennsylvania, Bud Schuster's son, and the chairman of the subcommittee on railroads, pipelines, and hazardous materials with the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Also on the dais was Representative Earl Blumenauer, a Democrat from Oregon, strong advocate for livable communities and a bicycling enthusiast, and an advocate and supporter of sustainable economies. Interestingly, Congressman Schuster expressed his support for high-speed rail. He felt very strongly that those funds needed to be concentrated in the Northeast area, where both the infrastructure, the concentration of population, and really the culture would support high-speed rail. Congressman Blumenauer, again, had a little more broad nationwide view on at least interregional rail. And he was recommending that there be an investment in rail to bring it back to the levels that we enjoyed in the early part of the 20th century as a form of transportation. Both were advocates for increased focus of intermodalism, and along with increased transportation funding. Devil being in the details, it was how do you pay for it. But they both felt that it was essential to support the United States' position in the global economy, as well as to support workers here in the United States as we are just making our way through the very slow recovery of the economy. Both felt that the Tiger Grant programs were important and supported some expansion of the Tiger Grants. I don't know that anybody came close to answering the question that was the title of the session of the federal government's role, but it was a very lively and informative session. And I'm glad to answer any questions.
Any questions to our General Counsel?
I do have
Go ahead,
a
Mayor.
request. Mr. Chairman, as you know, the General Counsel works for both the Executive Director and for the Board. So I need to ask formally a legal opinion from her regarding sunshine meetings between two members of the board. As you know, Miami-Dade County has a long-standing tradition of the chairperson and commissioners meeting through a process of advertisement following the Sunshine Law. That also operates in all of the cities of Miami-Dade County, mainly Hialeah and the city of Miami, which use that method all the time, but Coral Gables, Miami Beach, everybody. The Florida Transportation Commission is in charge of giving the FTC legal rulings, even though technically that's not the case. In other words, they should go to the Attorney General, but they don't. Okay? And so it is my opinion, and I say this with all due respect, that the establishment of the, and excuse me, Javier, I know you're going to be upset by my saying this, but the establishment of the Florida Department of Transportation is not overly anxious to have the chairperson of the FTC meet members. And so I have requested on several occasions meetings, and they say that they can't find the legal justification for it. And I told them that our attorney, Pam Leslie, was for many years attorney of the FDOT, and that I volunteered her without getting your permission first to help. But I would formally like to memorialize this with a motion, if I may, requesting her to write a memorandum as to exactly how Miami-Dade County and MDX would do something like this, and help them understand that the Sunshine Law does permit the meeting of two members under proper circumstances. And I so move, if I may.
As a board member, you're entitled to ask for that opinion, so we don't even need...
You don't need a motion.
You don't need the
Okay.
motion. You're
Thank
entitled
you.
to that opinion, sir.
And I'll get with you later, Mayor, and get the specifics, and then we'll work something out.
Okay. Any other questions to our general counsel? Hearing none, we'll go to the MPO representative report. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome to the two new board members, and let's have some fun. All right. Yeah, the meeting for the MPO last week was pretty spirited, as the SFRTA, as everybody knows them, Tri-Rail, did a presentation for their drive into trying to obtain positive governance and appeal for them to receive what FDOT District 4 is proposing with the Florida East Coast Railroad use. Okay, I'm not sure, personal opinion, I'm not sure they've done a great job thus far that proves that they should be the ones awarded this particular item, but they're making their appeal throughout the state, so we'll see that coming along. I don't believe the MPO was in position to take a vote on either position, so no position has been taken as of yet. They should visit us and also make the appeal on why they should be the ones, so we can weigh in on that. Another item that we do need to address, and I've already had the conversation with our council, is Chairman Perla Tavares is very concerned and would like to receive the buses free access in our expressways. I asked council to please address her concerns and why we can't, and also if Tere and council can actually go and visit with Ms. Tavares. The meeting could be arranged by Irma, because given that this item was brought up at the MPO, we need to circle back and address it. Okay, and lastly, you all know that we had the roundtable discussion here, and the purpose of the roundtable discussion that we had for the MPO is how do we move the MPO from the idling, being in the park, being in the parking lot, and not doing more than what it can do and can be as a powerful agency that's the conduit to transportation. We obviously are, saying yes to FDOT's budget and all the different things, but there's more to be done than just that. So looking at future projects, short-term and long-term. So the next item is going to be the actual summit, which is open to everyone, but especially open to all the MDX board members to partake because it will have some roundtable discussions to try to identify some solutions. So, and I will be sadly remiss if I don't say thank you very much, MDX, for hosting this meeting here, but also thank you very much to Tere Garcia, who did a phenomenal job in taking the notes and then walking us through everything that was discussed and pointing out some areas of further discussion. So again, thank you, and that concludes my report.
Any questions to Board Member Gutierrez? Go ahead, Mr. Wortman.
Okay. Well, more of a comment. I mean, we're saying about we have the police and fire rescue and now soon to be off-duty police officers in cars that we don't even know that they're officers being able to use, and the buses. Remember on the Miami-Dade transit side, okay, that one of their biggest problems is that only 25 to 33% of the people actually pay a full fare, okay, because with the Patriot Pass for vets, for seniors who go free regardless of income level, student pass, all these different things either go free or reduced. Okay, we have to be, it's piece by piece, we have to be careful. We have bonds to pay for, and we don't want to be in the same position Miami-Dade Transit. If they collected the full fare, which isn't a whole lot, but people do have trouble paying, okay, they would be in a lot better shape if they could. How do we do it, form a balance to provide the public service while still making sure our funding, financing for all the things we do can be met? And I know it seems like a bus or a few buses, but then how much before the jitneys, and then the carpools, which have their own rates, and everything else goes, and we're getting 33 cents on the dollar, and 1/3 of the people who used to be, before open road transit, were open road tolling, were actually paying for the roads, and 2/3 weren't on ours. We'll be back in the same position. But it's something to think about. It's a good idea what they have, but we have to be very, very careful on that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I like to comment on what you said. Absolutely. It is a delicate balance, and there is no such thing as free, because what is free for that individual is not necessarily free because somebody did have to pay the tab. We don't give out free. And if there is something to be given free or reduce costs, which is really what we can do, it needs to be to our customers, our paying toll customers first. They need to be first, and everybody else can wait in line, because we need to take care of the people that are actually paying the tolls. So having said that, if we are to take it as consideration, you already heard my piece.
Mirza, I just wanted to tell you, I know there's other board members on the MPO, but I know that this summit and bringing them here to MDX, you know, is, a lot of it has to do with your ideas. Right. I know you're humble about those things. You don't want to take the idea for the whole thing, but I think I want to congratulate you for doing that, because, you know, the fact that we're having a summit and we're looking at things regionally is really the first time the MPO is moving in that direction, and I think that was a great move and a great idea.
Thank you.
With that, we will move to the treasurer's report. We don't have a treasurer, but we have our CFO here who loves public speaking, and she's going to go ahead and give us a big speech about the report. Go ahead.
With a little tiny microphone. The Mickey Mouse microphone.
The treasurer's report is for the 6-month period fiscal year 2012 through December. The overall revenue was about $460,000 below the month-to-date forecast, and about $700,000 year-to-date below the forecast of $63.8 million. Toll revenues and fees month-to-date was about $400,000 below the forecast, and about $585,000 below the year-to-date forecast. The investment income is about $275,000 below the $1.4 million year-to-date forecast. As recently as last week, the Feds had indicated that they're going to hold interest rates to near zero at this point in time. So we continue to follow our policy to make sure that safety, liquidity is first before yield. On the expense side, we're about $250,000 below the month-to-date forecast of $3.5 million, and $1.2 million below, or 6%, of the $20.4 million year-to-date budget. Some of the variances associated with the expenses, toll operations has a savings due to the variable portion of the man lanes, as well as some timing on expected credit card fees. On the maintenance side, most of the maintenance side is task authorization driven, so we probably will continue not to see that savings that is reflected, more aligned to about a 3% savings by year end. On the professional service side, the GEC shows a significant savings, but again, that is task authorization driven, and again, that will probably be used up by the next half of the fiscal year. Public communications year-to-date is about $200,000 below the budget, and it's expected to have some initiatives towards the end of the fiscal year. Our interest expense is pretty much on budget for the month and about $200,000 below the budget year-to-date. All in all, we have posted about $700,000 above the year-to-date forecast. With that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead.
If our CFO could expand on the toll collection and our forecasting in each of the roadways.
Certainly. We're about 7% over prior years transaction-wise. We have posted about 10 to 11% on toll by plate. We're still in the process of moving forward our collection process with the collection agency. Unfortunately, Steve's not here to elaborate on that. But from the standpoint of the revenue composition, SunPass still is the overriding revenue. About 80% of the revenue comes from SunPass. We still have the 2 expressways that collect cash, and that's about 10% of our overall revenue.
Bottom line is we're above in transactions by 7% system-wide. We're just lagging behind in getting the collections of the toll by plate, which makes up about 20% of our revenues. And that's pretty much it. It's just the process of getting through that.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
What does that 20% mean overall in dollars?
It's actually 10% of the overall. I apologize if I stated 20%. Okay. 10% is cash, 80% is toll by plate, and the remaining 10% is...
So the toll by plate, that 8% equals to what?
It's roughly, we have posted what has been billed through the 6-month period, which is about $4 million. We have carried a receivable about $11 million as of the end of the year.
Okay, so it's not chump change?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanabria.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to get a number, if we can, on the uncollected amounts of money of toll violations that are still outstanding.
The accounts receivable, we don't refer to them as violations. We actually refer to them as accounts receivable customers. But we're carrying about an $11 to $12 million balance as of the end of December.
There's an $11 to $12 million balance that is still uncollected?
Correct, on our accounts receivable as of December 31st.
That's my only question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Wortman?
How much of that would be like over 90 days? In other words, what do we consider current as we're phasing in? And I know it's a moving goal because as we're getting this open road tolling thing set, but what would 90 days, 120 days, or whenever it hits certain targets, what percentage?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that rather than give you a specific number. I know that we've had a delay in moving the process forward through the collection process. I know that we've have ramped up with the system vendor to get a lot of these customers into the collection agency. And I think that at this point in time, I think January they sent quite a bit.
Mr. Holland?
One other quick thing, Maria, while you're getting back with him on that, if you can also get us an idea of what the other agencies are also experiencing as far as their accounts receivables on this stuff here as well, the percentages.
Maria, I'm sure you probably had, because I'm sure you read this kind of stuff, there's a Moody's report that I think was part of our package, which says toll rates keep outlook negative despite signs of economic recovery. And apparently a bunch of agencies have been downgraded. You know, how are we doing relative to this article? What's any concerns, any worries for this 2012?
Well, I think, first of all, the rating agencies are negative, obviously, on surface transportation, particularly toll authorities. I did include this in the package just to make the board aware of some of the issues that are happening. The rating agency's concern, obviously, if traffic goes up, the concern of rising gas prices, will forecasts be met, the conditions of being able to keep pace with CPI on the revenue stream in order to continue to build roads and meet their debt service requirement. There is also an interesting concern about non-revenue projects and how they're looking at toll authorities to look to other ways to pay for roads, not just non-revenue projects. So there's a lot of outside pressures for toll authorities, and they just kind of wanted to say that right now they feel the outlook is negative. And unfortunately, or fortunately, toll authorities are the only source of revenue for transportation.
Okay.
So be careful, because you know what that means. If there's a piggybacking somewhere, government is going to find a way to get in.
Any other comments from the
And
board?
you see that movement already occurring.
Politically, it's out there. All right, the committee reports are part of the record. We're going to go ahead and move on to the consent agenda, and if there are no objections to the consent agenda, then that item is consented to, I guess, and we're okay with it? Accepted, it's fine. We're going to head and move on to the regular agenda, item A.
Mr. Chair, item 9A, this is approval of the MDX fiscal year 2013 through 2017 5-year work program, $360.3 million, and this was endorsed to the board by the Operations Committee on January 17th, and I believe Mr. Lurigatos is going to address the board on this issue.
Mr. Lurigatos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. On your agenda item report, at first I'd like to apologize for a typo on the 2013 to 2017, not 3017, 5-year work program on the agenda item report. I'm going to go through a brief presentation on the work program overview, accomplishments, updates on the work program itself. In your packages, you do have an executive summary, a map, summary sheets. There is updated summary sheets in your folders with some quick updates that Sandra from HNTB will cover. And your total project cost variance report is also in that package updated. Also, you will further in the presentation hear from Terry Garcia to cover the work program public review comments that were received. She'll just give you a quick overview that you may have heard some of those comments earlier in the agenda. But just to cover the overall presentation of the work program, we've obviously kept a priority, as always, with system safety and system preservation. We've kept a cost escalation at 0 in this in this current cycle. The reason for a 0 is over the next 18 months, we do expect for all the major costs projects to be in, or basically already will have the bids in hand. So we don't see a need for the escalation over the 5-year window. Next year, we're obviously going to look to revisit that cost escalation. We did replenish the contingency account at $6.3 million for fiscal year 2013. So that contingency reserve is replenished under this work program approval. And we've updated all cost estimates to reflect current scope on all corridor projects. The financing plan does include revenues from ORT on 924, 874, and 878. It does not include ORT revenue recognition from State Road 112 and State Road 836, which we still have.
Why don't you explain what ORT and all these things, because I think the two new members that you're going to confuse with.
Yeah, and I apologize for acronyms. I'll do my best to keep acronyms to a minimum. Open road tolling revenues are not recognized on 836 and 112 because we're not going to go cashless on those expressways until 2014, June of 2014. We do expect next year for that to occur. We do not, obviously, so we didn't include that revenue recognition in this work program approval financing plan. We did hold a public review together with the Florida DOT on October 13th of 2011, and we also held a public review in January, or last week, and Terry Garcia will cover some of those comments soon. New projects, we kept some system preservation in and system-wide lighting upgrades, so we really isn't a lot of new projects in the work program. There's more just some of these system-wide type projects that are getting system upgrades. The significant changes on the work program, however, do call for a cost savings on open road tolling system-wide modifications for State Road 112. We modified the gantry structure to incorporate the dynamic message signs together with the toll gantries. So it's a 2-for-1 structure. That's a first of its kind that you're going to see pretty much that we're aware of anywhere, where you'll have a dynamic message sign to alert motorists to traveler information, as well as on that same structure you're going to have toll system, license plate readers and cameras, and the actual RFID tag readers. And that's what that gantry looks like. So this is what the State Road 112 and east side of 836 gantries are going to look like. So combining the toll system and the dynamic message signage all in one. Also, 836 modifications for ORT. We expect to go to design build in summer, and I apologize on the previous one. We're actually going to construction. Let me go back one. We're actually going to go to construction in June with a CEI advertisement also in April of this year. And as I mentioned earlier, go live of June of 2014. The 836 West and Central, those are going to design build in the summertime, and we expect the CEI a little bit slightly before that with the same go live date. This is how we divided the open road tolling modifications on 836. We have a West and Central, basically about 62nd Avenue to the west on 836 is the ORT West and Central project, and everything east of 57th Avenue or 62nd Avenue is going to be the east section projects. This is what the ORT West and Central gantries look like, very similar to what's out there today on those corridors. We've also updated, together with these projects, is the 836-28, which is operational and capacity improvement projects on 836, specifically a westbound auxiliary lane from Lejeune Road to 57th Avenue to tie in to what's getting done on 836-826 project. So there's additional capacity westbound and capacity improvements, operational improvements to eliminate left-hand entrances and exits, or try to minimize them as much as possible. And those were some of those improvements, and we added an advanced construction phase to that work program, which we hope to advertise by summertime of this year, design build. This is what the timeline is going to look like. It does have basic bids and an optional bid. If the bid comes in of what we can fund, we'll actually issue that work. But if the bid comes in higher, then we will not issue optional work. We're still working on scoping those projects. The 874-10 ramp connector we discussed earlier.
Very exciting. Is that our decision? Or? It's very exciting.
It becomes our decision based on the finances. And we allow, what we do is we base it on real bids and what we're going to be afforded.
They actually did something very similar on 836-826. If you got the maximum bid, you get to do everything. If not, you're only going to do certain what you can afford, almost like a bid cap. 874-10 is the 874 ramp connector. This is a project you heard about earlier. We've actually funded the preparation of procurement packages for design build, but we have not funded any design build or construction monies on this project. And we're discussing preliminary right-of-way activities. Also, there's some right-of-way that would be required, and we're beginning to have those discussions. That was also funded in the work program. The Florida's Turnpike Enterprise is letting the widening of the turnpike that you see there, and what you see on Turnpike there is actually the widened turnpike project and the footprint that we would have to work with. We are in discussions with Turnpike to let the project together, but they do have an aggressive schedule of meeting 2013, and that's sooner than we finish our planning study with outcomes. So we're just having those discussions with Turnpike now, and in fact, we'd also have subsequent meetings set up for next month.
So in other words, that's not the way it is now. This is what they're proposing to do in the widening.
Correct.
Okay.
And our project can meet either way. If the Turnpike does nothing, we're okay. If the Turnpike builds that, we're okay.
Right.
So, and our project's designed for both. This is that corridor itself, and you could see all the corridor alternatives that were mentioned earlier. You have the study area that goes from southwest, or just south of Southwest 136th Street all the way to 128th Street, and you could see the Nixon Smiley Pineland Reserve, and you could see the actual Pineland Reserve that's on the 136th Street corridor that would be impacted on those corridors. As was discussed earlier, we're going to have the project team with project manager Robert Linares that's leading this PD&E give you from start to finish, or not finish, but start to where we are today on the 874 project. There's been a lot of updates on what's happening on that corridor, and I think it's key for the board to be informed on that.
And the date of that recommendation is? Of when you're going to present these two studies?
The actual project was presented at the last Operations Committee meeting, but in light of what was presented today, specifically what was presented today, my recommendation to the chair and to staff is that at the next Operations Committee meeting, that the project manager, project team specifically address the concerns from Miami-Dade County, which was the subject of the PD&E, so that a decision can be made to move forward in the next work program to finance construction and so on. The only thing funded right now is the packaging of a design build.
For example, I want the project team to come in with the latest letters from Durham, because there's actually updated letters where they've already approved the current alternatives. So there's a lot of issues that need to be discussed and updated, because we do have buyoff from Durham already. We do have buyoff from even the Pineland Reserve. So but all that's been updated already.
Would the chair allow just a small comment to the new members? These are the very fine and intricate details of things that we do so well under the direction of Javier Rodriguez, our executive director. In other words, we foresee the problem. We're very conservative as to how we approach issues. Maritza, when she was chair, made us even more conservative, so that we dot all the I's and cross all the T's, so that there's really no room for any major problems.
I just wanted to show you these quick renderings of what the project could look like. This is southbound 874 as you approach the turnpike. You'd obviously, this would be a ramp that you'd take to go over the turnpike, and you'd see that to the right-hand exit. And this is what it would look like from the southwest 128th Street view eastbound. As you head east, you'd see the ramps, and you could take it towards the Don Shula northbound.
Isn't there, may I ask, isn't there an entry to a Costco somewhere in there?
The Costco is more,
Look at those
To the
trees,
north.
they're dying.
yeah,
You should
more to
put
the
it
north
in
on
the
More to
137.
the north.
The significant changes to the work program. The first one is the removal of the PD&E study budget for the Connect 4 Express.
Why?
And that was,
Bad thing?
in order to meet the financing plan and not put another PD&E out on the street that really was just going to basically eat into our capacity, we'd rather put that project on hold pending funding availability and solely fund the ones we have. So this project's been put on hold for now.
You sure that's not a tactic to make sure that we approve the 836 ORT and the 112? Are you sure that's not an
There is a
underlying
direct
tactic?
correlation, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I see this coming.
Thank you, Javier.
I'll make sure to be at that meeting.
We also incorporated on the ORT projects, the open road tolling projects, the front camera solution. That's a new technology we've been talking about, and in the state of Florida, Steve's been working closely on this whole front camera solution for trucks and turnpikes going that way. Well, every agency in the state's going to go that way because there will probably be a front camera solution necessary for trucks. So that's also been incorporated.
Would you just explain very briefly why front cameras for trucks?
Yep. Obviously, for trucks are always carrying a trailer, which the trailers are attributed to anyone or a lot of different companies. Trucks are required by law to carry a front license plate, which matches their cab license plate. And in order to correlate those two and us to go after those tolls, we need to see that plate.
Correct.
The Killian Parkway interchange, we're going to be heading out of there in the next couple of months and finishing up landscaping. As part of the safety analysis that was done and working together with the college, we did fund in this work program the 4th lane continued through west on Killian. And we're in the process of we're surveying that work, we're designing that work, and we hope by the end of this year, let a construction project or use our push button. We're determining the total cost to fund the 4th lane through on Killian West, which would be a major improvement to the already built Killian project. And we're working obviously together with Secretary Pago and his staff with Public Works staff. The 87409 was awarded below the engineer's estimate at $49 million, and that's well underway. This is a direct tie-in with the Bird Road project, and as a user of that segment of road, I want to congratulate Gus's team on on the Bird Road project is almost completed. I think it's just missing some final friction course, and the lanes are all open. I think that if you haven't driven the Bird Road Miller Drive project, it's come a long way in the last week.
Finally. I have to take it every day.
On the construction side, we did close out the 874, 878, and 924 open road tolling conversions. Those projects were closed out and closed in the books. We've also closed out barrier wall upgrades, sound wall upgrades, and traffic railing upgrades throughout the system. And we added the ones that you saw earlier for system-wide upgrades on lighting, et cetera. We awarded 874-9, as I mentioned, and we're also awarded the PD&E for that are mentioned here, which is the US 1 Express PD&E. The PD&E for the 824 ramp connector we're on time to finish at the end of this year with the alternatives, and to complete, we've also completed and received the location design concept acceptance on the 836 and I-95 project. So that's the first PD&E we actually finish at MDX. So it's a big milestone for us, and we're working together with DOT to try and fund design and then ultimately construction, possibly together with I-395 to get that entire east side of 836 from 17th to I-95 completed. This is what our current comparison with current budget looks like. You can see we have an increase in total with capacity projects, and which is what basically that 836 auxiliary lane project is what increases the total variance up. We did save some money on some facility improvements and planning projects that we deducted. You can see that $7.4 million deduction is related to the Connect 4 Express deduction. The overall work program, and you can see here, as always, funded a lot more heavily in the current years, or in the next 1 to 3 years, and then obviously it tapers off as we do not have ORT revenues leveraged on this work program cycle. So
is 152 million the highest we've ever had, Javier? Ever?
180. No, 180.
180.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question, has there been a motion made to approve this?
Not yet. It's just the presentation.
Is this?
It's just the presentation right now, and then you guys.
Is this something we can do now? Because I think just about everybody's had this presentation, unless there's. The new members had a presentation? They did? You did?
Yes. This is the last
Right?
slide, Mr. Sanabria.
I just want to see if we can expedite this, because it's a long meeting already.
Bien importante.
But
We have one member who has not seen it.
Yeah.
I haven't, so I apologize for that. It's not your fault.
I
Your
think
fault.
the
It's your
importance
fault.
of this presentation should be considered to its entirely.
All right,
This is the
okay.
last slide.
You didn't get the memo.
Es un desesperado.
Just to quickly wrap up the presentation, this is one of the key things that we always highlight in our work program of where the money goes, and this is ultimately small and local businesses. 30 cents of every dollar goes to those. You can see where we create 3,900 jobs created or retained based on that federal formula, and with the projects together with FDOT, we keep almost 9,000 jobs created or retained in our work program. And you can see the bulk of our money is in design, build, and construction on those capacity projects. So with that, I'd like to just quickly have Sandra come up and walk you through what's in your package that was updated, and then Terry can give you the review comments.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm Sandra Herdosia with HNTV. Just quickly, in your packages, you have 3 documents that relate to the work program. The executive summary that highlights the process for updating the work program. It summarizes the changes, and it also addresses the financing plan. You also have the 5-year summary sheets that show the expenditures through fiscal year 11, and then the projected budget for the remainder of fiscal year 2012 through 2017, and that's broken out in phases, in projects and phases. And lastly, you have the total project cost variance report, which details the changes in scope, cost, and schedule for each project, and it shows the variances between the currently approved budget and the budget that's proposed in the work program, and that shows the 5.3 that Alfred showed in the presentation. One thing, as mentioned by Alfred, the 5-year summary sheets shows the expenditures through fiscal year 11. It shows some of the completed projects in fiscal year 11. So it was revised to only reflect the budget for active projects that are part of the work program. The 5-year window does not change. And now I want to call Tere Garcia to address some of the comments received at the public meeting. Thank you.
I have 10 seconds.
Did you have any
On January,
You know, your decor on your outfit is very appealing. That's making sure that we don't attack you, huh?
never a problem.
Yeah.
It's not a shield, it's a statement.
Did you see that? I know she's making a big statement today.
I'm Terry Garcia, part of your general engineering consultant. On January 24th, Mayor Ferre, and that is what you see, the January 24th on your comments, because that is the day of the public review. And that was one of two that are scheduled annually for the public to obtain information and provide comments on the proposed 5-year work program. The first one was in conjunction with the Department of Transportation, which Secretary Pego always invites us to join him. In the packages, what you'll have is all the comments that were received up to Friday the 27th at 6:30, which was the deadline. But then we also added every comment that was also received until last night. So you have a full package of everything that has been submitted for your consideration. This, of course, study has been in our work program since 2007, and I do want to acknowledge that over time we also have received in prior occasions support by residents and stakeholders in the area southwest of Miami-Dade, supporting the need of the project to address the existing congestion and existing demand. What as Executive Director Rodriguez mentioned, the study will be an EIS, and the study will need to pass the most stringent tests and criteria in order to move forward. We will look and welcome the opportunity to look for a balanced solution, taking into account input from all environmental groups, all resident stakeholders, and all environmental and planning agencies.
Tere, and right there I pause, and I'd like to let the board know, why is this an issue today if it's been in our program for 4 years? And I'll tell you why it's an issue today. We advertised the project for project development. We shortlisted 3 teams. Those 3 teams are doing their due diligence in putting a proposal together to address all issues, known and unknown, and they've interviewed a lot of folks, which is how this has become more public knowledge. But the point is that every single comment that's made is a valid comment that has to be addressed through the process. That's the point. And we either come up with a solution or we don't. We either have a project that's permittable or we don't. And I'll use our examples at DOT with 18 mile with the US 1 going to the Keys. If it was up to the Florida Department of Transportation, and I was part of that, we would have had a 4-lane highway with a divided median. If it was up to the folks that were opposed to it, it would have stayed exactly the same. What came out of it was a 2-lane highway with a divided median, a wide shoulder coming north, and roughly $10 or $11 million worth of mitigation on-site and off-site, and a project that's saving at least 13 lives a year. So the process works. Some of it gets very contentious, and I'll warn you. There are many points of entry during a process, and the higher you elevate the environmental class of action, the more points of entry exist. And that's the point. The point is to make sure that it's a project that can sustain the purpose and need. If it's a frivolous purpose and need, the project dies. If it's a strong purpose and need, it'll survive. That's the point of project development or the NEPA process.
Mr. Director, and in the scope, I want the board members to know that the scope includes a Citizens Advisory Committee. And we have, in your packages, is the response that we have provided for everyone that has submitted a response, which includes the welcoming of including all their names in the database and eventually working together in this. Thank you. Thank you.
Terry,
Go ahead, Mayor.
first of all, besides once again commending you for your wonderful work that you do for us,
Even though she's dressed in black?
even though she's dressed in black and you have a vampire cross.
With a cross.
That public hearing was on the 24th.
It was a public review.
I'm
Our
sorry.
public involvement policy
Sorry.
provides an open house
Okay.
type meeting for comments
Yeah.
and input.
Got it. I stand corrected, the public review. I'm sure that a week has gone by. We received this by email yesterday, right? Which was the 29th. I don't mean to be, too harsh, but I think if you had sent it 2 or 3 days earlier, it would have been a little bit better. I know that it took time to put all that information into a memorandum, but the 24th, if it had gone out on the 27th or the 28th, it really would have been a little bit better.
Point well taken, Mr.
And secondly, Mr. Chairman, at the last board meeting, we passed a resolution after the executive director's report asking, or actually it was my request, I don't think we voted on it, that the port director come and give us a presentation similar to the one that he made that everyone was raving about, because what happens at the Port of Miami is going to greatly impact MDX over the next 10 years, and I think it behooves all of us. I noticed that you had put down there that the thing would be at the operating committee. We're not all members of the operating committee, even though we're invited. I would recommend that you do it before the full board. It's important enough to take the 15 or 20 minutes to do that with Gonzalo's acquiescence.
I will amend my request to the port director to come before the entire board to make that presentation.
Are there any, go ahead.
I have some comments. First, I'd like to congratulate the team for a wonderful presentation and very thorough. But I'd like to first, aside from the questions I'm going to ask the CFO on the items here listed on the summary, I first like to ask a question to the director. Why are you excited about this work program? Why should we be excited about this work program? Go ahead. What is the bite-in on this?
The excitement, as I stated when we were putting together the work program, is that, well, I'm not that exciting of a guy, so anyways, the excitement is that, as I've stated for about 5 years that I've been here, I think our responsibility was to take care of our 5 expressways. And 5 years ago in 2007, we did our visioning, we set up our master plan. We set three goals, strategic plan. We said connectivity, we said technology, we said transit. And in connectivity, we wanted to ensure that our facilities operated efficiently and connected one with the other. Technology, we wanted to use the highest level of technology both in the information side, the ITS, Intelligent Transportation Systems, and in the tolling side. So no more toll booths, all electronic. And on the transit side, when you have an interconnected system, we all recognize we can't build our way out of congestion. Everybody that's in the highway business understands that. So we have to look at other options. Now, you've got highways, which 98% or 97, 98% of the people in Miami-Dade County use to commute, or in the Tri-County area use. And then you've got fixed rail or Metro Rail or Tri-Rail, which 2 to 3% use. The operating costs are very different. The ability to do these things are very difficult, and I won't elaborate. But I think, as this board recognized 4 or 5 years ago, that we have an opportunity with our highway systems, with using DOT's example on I-95 to run express buses on managed lanes, to have an interconnected network of highways, get the best use of our highways, and provide high-quality transportation in the region. That's our goal. That's why I'm excited, Board Member Gutierrez, because this work program completes the reconstruction of 874, advances the reconstruction of 836. It starts the construction of ORT on 836 and 112. It furthers the partnerships with DOT on the 826, 836, and the Palmetto Section 2 and the airport. And it sets us up really well to figure out how to best operate looking forward. That's what's important. The other thing is, we've got a number of studies underway, whether it's extending 874, whether it's extending the Gratney East and West, that are funded in this work program. And we're initiating the southwest extension of State Road 836 to see if there is a viable alternative. That's what's exciting about this, Madam Chair, or former
Yes.
Chair. That's what's exciting about this work program. Do I wish it was 3 times the size? Absolutely, but we don't operate that way. We work within what we have, and we go slowly as we recognize revenue.
Very good.
Mr. Wortman?
I had a follow-up,
Oh,
if you didn't notice.
sorry.
I had
Go
a
first.
follow-up to that because there are some questions, if you don't mind. Thank you. Well received, I hear you. In the first page, on page 1, there are some things there that I would like to address just because I want a clarification. It says 5.4 million above the current approved capital budget. It says before that in overall increase. That means it was over and above what we had in reserve for this? Or was it the same?
That's the change from the last.
In totality of what's going on the 5-year snapshot, like
Right.
the work program is, we went up a total of 5.4. But that's because we added, the biggest addition to that was the 836 widening project. We did deduct other projects like the Central Connect 4 and a few others. So in totality, the increase was 5.4. And why does it look like if it's a smaller work program is because it's still an ongoing, and 1 year dropped off, but we added a 2017 with not much going on, as you can see in the drawdown as it goes from 2013 to 2017. But it did increase by 5.4 total.
Okay, very good. Another question to that is, when it says the financial planning, it points out that the debt coverage requirements of 1.20, however, in this particular plan, we fall just below the mandate of 1.40, just below. What does that mean, and are there any adverse impacts on that?
The financing plan is constantly updated based upon revenue projections, expenses, as well as updates on the construction program. What we did on this work program, we held the debt to the last issuance, which was Series 2010. So the work program is completely funded up for the 5-year work program. That's why we had to take out a project. When we did our analysis for the update of 2013, 14, and 15, we had to adjust the revenues downward as well, including investment income. So from that perspective, our target is always 1.4 based upon board policy. Some of those years fell into the 1.38, 1.39, but we did want to make the board aware that our trust indenture requirements is 1.20. So again, we have enough cushion to always make sure that we're compliant with our legal covenants.
Very good. Okay. I want to point out that this does not contemplate, like I said, no wonder the Connect 4 is not in there. The 112 and the 836, remember I'm forecasting it.
But I want to add to that, and I'll give you the balance of your time. You know, when you hear, especially in today's meeting, people were saying, you know, here you are doing an expressway outside the UDB. You know, the Connect 4 really is an expressway which is in the urban core, or a roadway that's in the urban core, and really does provide all that policy positions that a lot of the people were advocating. Is it something that we can't look at as well? Because, I mean, that's...
The magnitude of the studies, and this is a financial exercise, both of the projects are in the long-range transportation plan. We're going to initiate both of the studies. Obviously, Connect 4 is a much bigger and more expensive undertaking. In making the decisions for balancing the work program, we looked at how to impact the program, and this is something we have to do all the time, every year in balancing. And we decided to move out the initiation of the Connect 4 one fiscal year so that we can keep the rest of the program balanced. It was the least impact to the overall program. If we keep the Connect 4 in, we would have had to move multiple projects out to balance out the amount of money. So that's really that was the exercise that's done. That doesn't take away from the need or the desire to initiate. The team is still working on the scope, and if everything goes well, we would like to initiate it next fiscal year.
The jingle is 112 and 836. That's the bottom line to the whole thing, and making sure that we prioritize it. With that, I conclude my questions, and thank you.
Mr. Wortman.
Okay. First of all, what our executive director mentioned earlier about the facts and figures, the numbers, 97%, 98% of the people using our highways in cars. If you include the buses, it's 99.2%, because that's part of transit. The rail, Metro Rail, People Mover, Tri-Rail, okay, all that together is 0.8% of the trips per day. Okay, put that in perspective to the billions. Okay, and if you include the buses and the Metro Rail and the People Mover, average per day is 3% of total trips. If you go into the peak hours it goes up to about 5 to 6%. Off hours it goes down to 1% or less. Okay, but numbers-wise, how do we go ahead and help the transit improve the numbers? What we've done, in addition to working with the connection to the airport with our right-of-way, okay, and with the bus rapid transit and the buses on shoulders on 874, hopefully soon to be expanded to other parts of our road. I'd still want to see, hopefully this year, finishing up a study on the BRT so that we could get that going, this year. And that sort of gets me a bit excited. We're moving forward on those things, working with FDOT regarding the MIC, where everything comes together on that. So we have on the highway side, which is the bread and butter that pays for everything, and the bondholders are happy in what we've been doing. Okay, we also have solidified our base and are expanding into things that include heavily on highways, because no matter what, the highways are the backbone of even the transit industry with the buses and the freight and everything else, but also getting into the alternatives there in a fiscally responsible manner. Okay, so that's basically my comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Holland.
I have more of a philosophical query. I noticed last year we had the 1.4 mandate for the debt ratio, and I think we fell a little short of that last year. Is the 1.4 rationally based, or do you think it's a number that the board has mandated that's too high? If it's not, do you project that we'll be getting at least at that 1.4 debt ratio next year going forward?
We did not fall below the 1.4 last year. So we've always achieved the 1.40 coverage when we have come to the board and asked them to approve the work program. Again, we have updated our financial forecast for traffic and revenue. We took...
Well, that's 1.2 with the bond.
Mr. Holland, I think the issue here is that this is a projection moving forward, and as the year finishes, then we see what the actual completed at. We have been above the 1.4 in actuals. This is a projection moving forward. Now, all these numbers change depending on traffic.
Correct.
Depending on expenses, depending on how the revenue goes up or down. So this is a snapshot.
So the actual then was above 1.4, but I recall the last work plan said it was slightly below as well, but the actuals were above it.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. But just so you know, the reason that the 1.4, to answer your question, is really the recommendation from the credit rating agencies. In order for us to maintain our A3 credit rating, we need to be in that 1.4 range, if not higher.
Any other comments? Is there a motion to approve this item? Is that a motion?
I'll make the motion.
There's a motion.
Wait, but I'm going to add something to it. I'm going to make the motion to approve with major consideration to be given to local preference, and each and every time you go out and procure, that local preference is considered as an option to include in that process.
There's a motion, there's a second, there's a third. Anybody objecting to the item? Hearing none, item passes.
You like it?
We'll move on to item B.
Mr. Chair, item 9B is for procurement contract RFP 1102. This is for design services for State Road 836 interchange modifications at 87th Avenue. This issue was endorsed by the Operations Committee on January 17th, and it is to approve a negotiated contract with A&P Consulting Transportation Engineers. I believe Mr. Lorgatos can address this if you have any questions.
Mr. Ludialis, you want to give a presentation or anything?
Just a brief comment. Number one, this is for a total of $5,602,952 with 96 cents. With that included an optional service of $96,814 with 85 cents. That has to be approved in writing by MDX for a noise wall study, depending on the outcome of the original study that they're going to do for warranting of noise walls. This does include a 20% small business participation and a 15% local business participation on this project. And this is for 87th Avenue South and 836 Northwest 12th Street Design Services, just west of the 826, 836 interchange.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I had a concern that I felt was contradictory to each other. On page 18, if you go to section 2 and 2I, you're going to notice that it says services may begin, but notification of conflict of interest shall be made in writing. So if you have a conflict of interest, you can go ahead, proceed with the job, and notify me. But then on the next paragraph, it also goes, the consultant shall discontinue any relevant performance until notified by MDX Executive Director. So isn't that contradictory? If you have a conflict of interest, why should you proceed to do the work? Should you not do the work? First address the conflict and then proceed. So it's sort of, when I read it, it points out
Inconsistency.
Inconsistency. Exactly. Touche.
We'll defer that question to our general counsel. I'm sure she would like to answer that.
Perhaps we can address it where we
Page 18
can
of
modify
28.
it, that if there is a conflict of interest, the work should not commence no matter what, and we should address it first and then move on.
I believe what this particular contract section is intended to do is that if something comes up that there's a perceived conflict, it's brought to the executive director's attention. There are all different types of conflicts of interest, and it would then be up to him to determine whether it was one of such significance that we would need to take further action. So you might not want to stop a project right in the middle without having that. And it says any relevant performance until notified by the executive director. So he has to make quick action on that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sanabria?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question on this contract, is it a fixed expense contract or is it up to that amount? In other words, do we have a contract that totals 5.6 or do we have a projected amount of time up to 5.6? Could it be less?
This is a lump sum contract.
It's a lump sum. What about the bumps in the contract? What is the ratio of bumps in the contract, and what percentage of that number is? 15%, 20%, 10%?
What is bump?
I'm sorry.
Increases in the contract? You mean increases in the contract?
Yeah. Are there any increase stipulated in the contract?
No.
What's that?
There's no increases in the contract.
Okay.
Mr. Wortman and then Board Member Gutierrez.
Okay. They have any benefits for bonuses for doing this early, penalties for finishing it late? And how is this going to coincide timing-wise with the 836, 826 interchange?
This is a design services contract which fell under CCNA.
This is not the construction, just the design.
And just for clarification, the total design fee was a man-hour or staff hour rate and time allocation. That's how the total numbers were developed, negotiated based on rate and time.
Okay.
Need a motion to approve?
Wait,
Or is that?
Hold on. I think there was
What type
one.
of noise wall is being considered?
Is it?
Concrete noise wall, Madam Chair.
Why not the one that you can see through the other side? I thought it cost the same.
No, it does not. Not yet.
Cost more?
Costs more.
Still costs more.
Clear costs more, and on 874, the property owner paid the difference.
So is it the one with the flower imprint, leaf imprint?
Just for clarification, the noise wall that's being reviewed here or studied is east of 87th Avenue towards the interchange, tying in close to the DOT 836 project. And we'd only be designing noise wall, the actual auger cast pile, and so whatever panels can be dropped in, we can obviously increase that or include that in the construction side. We don't need to make that decision right now, actually, in design.
The only thing I'd like to ask staff is just to make sure, because to tell Commissioner Diaz and Senator Soto, and I believe Commissioner Sosa, because, for instance, Senator Soto calls a lot with a lot of ideas for projects and stuff, that we're doing this type of work. So he knows that we're trying to address issues and things there. You know what I'm saying? So it'd be great. It's right by it, because it's right. This is near Fontainebleau, right? This is 87th Avenue. He's near there.
Both Commissioner Diaz and Commissioner Soto.
Yeah, yeah, but he he calls for anything that happens along that 836. Is there a motion to approve this item? There's a motion. There's a second. Hearing no objections, the item carries. We're going to item C.
Item C, Mr. Chair, is a contract renewal for system-wide landscape services. This renewal approval was endorsed by the Operations Committee on January 17th.
Comments from the board? Board Member Gutierrez.
Just a question, in historical, have we used the maximum allowance permitted under this contract? Have we been using it in the last years? Or to what point have we been using it?
No, Madam Chair. As of to this point, we've used about half. So maybe it's a little bit more, but about half the capacity of the contract.
And we don't have a need?
Not at this time. We expect to use about half of the capacity of the contract for the next cycle. At least that's what we have budgeted for in the work program to finish up 874 and a few other segments.
Any comments from the board?
Yeah,
Mr. Sanabria and then Mayor.
I defer to the mayor.
No. Please.
No, Mayor?
This is the question of seniority.
The floor is yours. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
I don't know, seniority equates to what, long time being here?
Just remember, Mayor, that it's our night tonight, okay? It's our night tonight.
I think he's baiting you from the side of the room.
I forgot what it was that I was going to ask.
At least he's honest.
Now we know what seniority he's talking about. You heard yourself, Sanabria. We know seniority now.
Ms. Mayor?
Is anybody here that represents Diaz Farms?
Yeah, they're back. I see them back there.
Would you please stand up for a moment? Mr. Coutier, let me also and Mr. Diaz recognize both of you and tell you that this is just my personal comment. You guys have done a hell of a job, and I want to commend you for the quality of work that you do. But now I have a question. Thank you. And now I have a question on this fiscal impact. There is no number there. It says work will be furnished as identified in the 5-year. That's not acceptable.
It's in the work. Go ahead.
You can pull that figure out and put it in there.
Board Member Ferre, we actually have right now.
It's a $6 million.
It's a $6 million upper limiting amount contract. As of right now, we only have about 2.8 to 3.2 from. And Juan Toledo can verify the
So my question is, and I'm not criticizing, I'm just really asking, why don't you put 2.8 so that the board knows that that's really what we're talking about right now, not $6 million?
If I can clarify that, Board Member Ferre, because this is a 2-year contract, and right now, that 2.8 figure would be what we have currently funded now. If next year we want to landscape something else, we could add more funds. And that's
then say that. It's 2.8 today, and it could go up to as high as 6. That's it. And then we know what the fiscal impact.
The totality of this contract is a $6 million.
Yeah, it's up at the top.
But does that obligate us to the 2.8 if a project is taken out or something?
Hey, this is a push-button contract.
Exactly. It is a push-button contract.
But what I think what the mayor is trying to prevent is expectations, which are this. Oh my God! I just got a $6 million extension. Do you know what I'm saying? As opposed to, that's all I'm saying.
Point taken.
Okay.
We will reflect it in the minutes.
Yeah, and let me tell you, this is a surprise to me because I'm intimately familiar with this contract and the issues back and forth. I'm glad that Mr. Diaz is wants to renew this contract. I see really the stuff that they've done on the 874 is very nice. It's It's very different from what we were doing before. I do want to say something. I went through some of the scores, and I have a concern on a couple of issues. You know, especially when it comes to the small business program, the scores seem to be a little subpar. I don't know why, but I would encourage that the staff and the contractor meet and figure out how, you know, we correct these things. This is something that's very important to all of us. I don't know if anybody wanted to add anything regarding that issue.
You see, Robert, you're not the only one that worries about these things.
Well, it's really funny, Mr. Chair. I circled that item, but I think it's rather ironic that they were actually scored that when in essence they should be a small business also. I don't know if they qualify themselves as small business, maybe perhaps they're using. So, because, I mean, what they put on the contract is quite substantial because 26% is over and above what we would ever require. So
they are meeting their small business requirement. It's just that their small business it's doing the maintenance of the installation of the landscape, so that's still ongoing. So until we actually realize payment for those for the maintenance, you're not going to see that reflected on paper. But they are meeting, and based on the schedule that they have for maintenance, they will be meeting their SB requirement pursuant to the contract.
So they have to comply.
Yes.
So then why not adjust that they got a low score? I mean, they're being penalized for something that they shouldn't be, in essence.
Again, right now we have a schedule to meet the small business requirement. The maintenance still ongoing. So
But the maintenance will always be ongoing.
For 2 years, for a year. A year?
Isn't the maintenance always ongoing?
year.
Because you
For
have to
1
plant
year.
a tree and then you keep
For 1 year.
maintaining it, right?
If I may clarify, though, there has been issues in working to get small business involved from the beginning of the contract to where we are today. As of right now, this evaluation is for for the previous term of the contract. So for the previous term, we have worked with them to get them to be compliant. I think going forward, they're satisfying that requirement. In the past, this is reflecting.
Do us all a favor. Let's come back at the end of the summer and let us know how we're doing on that issue.
Operations.
Okay? Yeah, have it come back to operations, let us know what we're doing, and then we could figure out as well, you know what I'm saying, if people are trying to comply. One last thing, and Javier,
Yes.
I know I've spoken to you about this, an issue, not that we could do it, but there's an issue regarding piggybacking that came about of this contract on a separate item. Could our MDX contracts be piggybacked? Should we be including that language so other agencies could take advantage of that when they come out? Not to say that we're going to do it on this one, but is that something that we should try to have as a policy, a piggyback provision in our contracts?
And unfortunately, Helen just stepped out of the room, but we do allow any governmental entity to piggyback on our contracts. There is no prohibition in our policy anywhere that they do that. The issue that came up with this particular one is that there is another governmental entity, a big governmental entity, that for whatever reason requires that language actually be in the contract. But that's not a prohibition that MDX has.
To avoid in the future, maybe we could try to have that language in case, not for this particular contract, but other contracts, that there's going to be an issue with DOT or whatever, because DOT is the agency that's having the issue with it.
But, Mr. Chair, that's going to impact this agency substantially, because a piggyback language in a contract will impact your cost initially in the contract. In other words, you're going to be very cautious as to what kind of pricing you give in that contract. So you have to be very cautious in scale, right? So caution with that.
That's true.
And if I may just piggyback on that, the reason why it's important is that a medium-sized company or a small company may be able to stretch it a little bit to get work from us. But if you tell them that the state's going to jump on that contract and all of a sudden instead of $2 million worth of work, it's going to be $20 million worth of work, they may not want to do $20 million worth of work at a tight price.
If I can't, Mr. Director, maybe at the policy and planning, if you could discuss the issue.
That's what I was going to
flesh it out,
recommend.
because I think that's a great point.
That's what I was going to recommend, Mr. Chair, that we have a full discussion of policy and planning.
There's a motion to approve, Mr. Sanabria. You wanted to say something. You wanted to second the motion? Any comments? Any objections to this item? Hearing none, the item moves forward. The next item, item D.
Item E, Mr.
D.
Chair, if
No.
I may take the podium.
Pam, D is the resolution.
Sorry.
We're still short.
I'll still take the podium.
Yes, take the podium.
Second the motion.
I was.
Hold on. I believe there's, go ahead.
I wanted to make some comments on this particular item. First, due to the time, I wanted to ask the chair if he would accept this item being vetted at Policy and Planning and perhaps also intergovernmental. It has not been fully vetted, and we're rushing on making a statement. We're making a statement on something that absolutely, because of safety reasons, we should be endorsing, approving something that texting is wrong. But saying that we are asking our legislators and we're supporting a bill that is contradictory to already existing bills for careless driving. So why the duplication of bills? Why get in the middle of a firing line of House and Speaker fighting with each other on what is right and what is wrong? Why are we weighing in without first surveying our customers? How do they feel about this? Because this has an adverse effect. By the way, it means a ticket, and the ticket has a price tag. We should not be voicing anything else that adds another burden to anybody. You know, isn't it time for government to ease the control over the people? Are we also advocating more mother control? One thing is safety, the other thing is pushing this. Why do we, without vetting it, both sides moving to go on a resolution?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
If I may,
sorry.
if I may, to Board Member Gutierrez, I think the reason has a name. The name is Ray LaHood. Now, what we say, I don't mean to be, I was going to say sarcastic, but that's not the word, demeaning. But, you know, what MDX thinks and y nada, as we say in Spanish, and nothing, is about the same for a legislator in Tallahassee, with all due respects. What this allows us to do is that next time our distinguished colleague Al Maloof goes to see his cousin up in the transportation department, he can tell him, listen, you know, I know you're a big Republican and you're pushing this big thing about not texting in highways. I want you to know that my board is fully behind you. Guess who makes the final decisions on Tiger grants?
Yeah, but
his name is Ray LaHood. Okay, and the problem is that the last two times we've applied, and we got big guns. We're paying a lot of money too up in I'm sorry, because Javier's going to jump on me. We're not.
I don't think $10,000 is a lot of money.
We're not paying a lot of money, but we're paying some money to. But the point is that we've gotten zero in the two Tiger grants application that and I think this is just a good federal politics. And I want to tell you something. The Dade delegation and the legislators, I will give you 100. I'm going to pull a Mitt Romney here. I'll give you 100-to-1 bet.
You're a Democrat, Mayor.
Yeah, but I can follow the betting schedule of Mitt Romney. I said I give you 100-to-1 odds that nobody in the legislature is going to pay any attention to what MDX has to say about this.
Oh, absolutely. So why get in the middle of the discussion? Yeah, I understand that, but more importantly, we have not fully vetted this ad policy. We're bypassing our own policy and procedures by not fully vetting this particular item or any item. That is a procedural approach.
Okay, can I just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, has it gone through policy and planning and intergovernmental?
It has not gone through.
And why is that?
It has not gone, that is why I'm
Wait,
objecting.
stop for a second. I have the floor, right, Mr. Chairman?
No, I was
Thank you. Thank you.
Board Member Sanabria, it came up at the last board meeting.
Excuse me, a question is, who wrote this and why did you write it without going through the committees?
Because the answer was, we were having a discussion here, somebody raised it, and I believe there was even a motion that was made to say, please pass a resolution because of the fact that we've been so proactive in the anti-texting.
The board passed a motion?
We did.
Well, but when the board passes a motion, Mr. Chairman, if I have the floor, if I may, thank you. From what I know how things proceed around here, when the board passes a motion of that nature, it should go to a respective committee to fine-tune the language and have it come back. I mean,
I believe that the reason that we did it at the time was because session's ongoing now. But if the sentiment of the board is that this should go to a committee, and then it could come out of committee and then be back before the session's over, if that's the sentiment of this board, I mean...
When is the next
and we'll do it.
Committee meeting? So
February.
This month we'll schedule one.
Okay, quite frankly, the reason is precedent also. If the board's going to start making motions for resolutions, in which I hate resolutions by motions. I think it's sabotaging the committee system and the process. But other than that, it should go to the proper committee. So unless there's an objection, I think it should just go to committee and come right back.
No objection, but a comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Holland.
I have no objection, and I support it going to committee because I don't think we're looking at some of the other ramifications of this here. It says texting and reading texts. It can be proven in court if you're texting because it's dated. When you talk about somebody reading a text and the police just pulling you over for something like that, it can become an abusive tactic to pile things onto you. So I think we need to recognize what we're getting into when we do this here.
And we're not Arizona, but we should fully vet it at policy. It is a procedure, standing procedure, and why are we violating our own procedure?
I believe that it's within the purview of the chair to go ahead and just remand it and assign this to the Policy and Planning Committee. Policy and Planning, and then intergovernmental, but it'll happen
We'll send it to
in the
you.
month.
That's not a problem.
And it'll happen in the month of February. And you'll bring it back, hopefully, if they recommend it for the next board meeting.
We're all in agreement.
Okay, so that takes care of item D. Now we're going to the next item, which is the election of treasurer. Go ahead, Pam, give us the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the election of the authority treasurer. This is due to the vacancy in the office resulting of Mr. Vigil's term expiring and the appointment of board member Fernandez Guzman to fill that vacancy on the board. I'll just go over it real quickly so that for the benefit of our new members as well of what the procedures are. I will open the floor for nominations for the office of treasurer. You may nominate yourself or somebody else on the board. There must be a second for any nomination. Members need not be present to be nominated or to be elected. After the nominations for the office of treasurer are closed, if a nominee chooses, they may make a statement regarding their candidacy, or they may provide a written statement for the board members that would also be provided to the executive secretary for the record. Members that may wish to vote by communications media technology can by fax or text that's been set up with the executive secretary send in their vote. If there is anybody on the telephone line, they can also vote verbally, but I would ask them that they wait and give their vote after all of the written ballots have been received by the executive secretary. Let me also remind all members participating that you are required to vote as a member present, and you may not abstain. And before I open the floor to nominations, are there any questions about the process?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Has anybody informed you that there are only two members that are absent? Have any of the two members informed you that they want to vote on this?
They would have contacted the executive secretary, but I'm not aware that they have, no.
So on the record, they have not requested
for the item to be heard with them.
Is that correct? Thank you.
Mr. Wortman.
Okay. And the term of this is just through basically June until the regular...
That's correct,
Okay,
Mr.
it's not
Wortman.
for a year.
It completes the term through June 30th. Any other questions?
Questions, board members? I don't think there are any, Pam. You could open
And
up
the floor is now open for nominations for the office of authority treasurer.
Pam, if I can, I'd like to nominate Louis Martinez. I know he wanted to be treasurer last time. And I'll tell you, Louis, I voted for the last treasurer that left. I know you were upset that day, but I will tell you, I think you're very capable, and you're very active, and I know you're very fiscally aware of things, and I have all the confidence in the world that you'd be a great treasurer. So I nominate Louis if you want to accept it.
If your nomination is seconded, I will accept the nomination.
I second it.
We have nomination of Mr. Martinez by Mr. Lasarte, seconded by Ms. Gutierrez.
Chair,
This,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Who on the board wants to do it?
Well, I was going to somewhat mention that in my approach, because I think everybody, because I like Louis a lot as well, but as everybody knows, I've always tried to see if we can somehow spread some of these things around, which keeps the board very, very active. And in my opinion, Mr. Wortman, Mr. Sanabria, and Mr. Maloof have not had a chance to serve in either of those capacities as of yet. So if I would recommend, no Mr. Wortman, so I would recommend Mrs. Sanabria as a way that we keep this board kind of vibrant and involved. Louis and I both have had an opportunity to serve as vice chair of this board. And obviously, I would trust either one of these guys at the helm. Both of you are very conservative, which means the money will be kept tight. I typically would have to argue with you sometimes on loosening the purse strings. But I would like to nominate Mrs. Sanabria as a candidate for treasurer as well.
I'll second Gonzalo.
As I understand this, what you said was that Maloof, Sanabria, and Wortman have not served in executive positions. You asked them if they were interested, and I guess they shook their heads, and you took that to me a no. So Sanabria, so you're making a motion for Mr. Sanabria, is that correct?
That was, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And the only reason I did not mention the other two members who haven't, because they're fairly new to the board. So I'm just being honest about it.
And I was vice chair for 5 years.
But I'm saying that was prior to my time.
Did you want to be? You wanted to be treasurer also?
No, he said no.
Oh, okay. All right.
So just to be clear, Mr. Holland has nominated Mr. Sanabria and was seconded by Mr. Avila. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, the nominations are closed. You have paper ballots that have been provided to you. If you would fill out the ballot, please. And then the executive secretary will collect those. If anybody doesn't have it, please let us know. There are extra copies. But you get to vote one time.
Well, yeah, I'm going to know. Is this in Chicago?
You voted twice today, yeah. Oye, tuviste que el salario es retroactive to January.
For pain and suffering.
I think they should.
It sería el gran sanity to the process.
Majority vote?
Have all board members supplied their paper ballot to the executive secretary? Mr. Martinez? Okay. And just to double check, I want to be sure that we don't have anybody on the phone line. If you are on the phone line, please notify us now.
Mr. Martinez has 3 votes, and Mr. Sanabria has 8 votes.
Okay, congratulations, Mr. Sanabria. Thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Sanabria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's an impressive challenge that we have. There's a lot of issues that are affecting the Expressway Authority, and they have to be addressed. And one of them is keeping us on course in terms of our budgetary and finances. A lot of our projections are off cue. With fuel rising, with unemployment continuing, we need to ratchet our budget in terms of how we're going to do this. One of the things I want to work on, just for a minute, is the collection of unpaid tolls. It is a very big number. It started as a little red flag. It's gotten this big, and now it's an overwhelming number. It's almost 10% of our budget, uncollected. So that's one of the things I like to promote, together with the chairman and the ops chair and the board members, more PP3 activities. I think that we have a lot we can accomplish that, especially with a MIC. And again, we continue to look at our current bond issues. There's a number of bond issues and low interest rates that we might be able to refinance and create substantial savings. So I appreciate the confidence. I hope I can do the job. Thank you.
You have 3 months, and Obama's out to make a difference.
There you go.
Congratulations. Congratulations, Mr. Sanabria. I don't have it's been a long meeting. I don't have any comments other than to tell you that we have the policy and planning, and we have the ops, and we're going to be having those reports. So in case board members, even if they may not be on these committees, you could attend and see what follow that along. With that, is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Rivera, you want to make a motion to adjourn?
I second that, yeah.
I voted for the trial.